I'm going to begin talking some about the fourth phase of the session, the phase that we call present time or attention out. When you're doing short little sessions like in a counseling class or some quick sessions by phone, 5-minute turns, 10-minute turns each, what we call mini session, you're often not really going to need to do the attention out phase, and you often won't really do the first or second phase either. You might just go straight to what the person wants to talk about. Sometimes you'll want to start with a new and good, but it's really up to you, and it doesn't, in a quick little session, it often doesn't really matter much. However, even in a really short session, if the person has gone into feelings that are powerful and feelings that are upsetting, feelings that might leave them a little bit off balance as they go out into the day, then you do want to do some present time work with them. And in any full-length session, when you're talking 40, 50-minute turns, we're going to always want to finish with substantial time, 5 minutes or so for doing present time work. Sometimes a little more than that if it's been a particularly intense or heavy session. So when we think about present time, just to review, we're focusing on the principle that we want to separate the healing time in our lives out from the living time in our lives. And we try to focus fully on the healing work that we're trying to do at times that we have set aside intentionally for that. And then the rest of the time we're trying to focus on our pain and distress and our insecurities, our different issues, as little as we can, and focus on our lives. And the principle is partly just that life is much more interesting than distress. We can get really caught up in kind of ruminating on our distress when we're feeling frustrated about it or discouraged about it or just out of habit. But when we're really interested in the world, when we're really interested in our relationships, when we're really interested in what it is we're trying to accomplish, well, then that becomes much more engaging than ruminating about our distress. But it also just works better as healing. And this is a place where co-counseling diverges from the philosophies of many therapy approaches that would actually encourage you to kind of ruminate on things in between sessions. And that's not how we try to do it in co-counseling. We try to be up and out as much as we can between sessions. It's not always going to work, but as much as we can, that's what we're trying to do. And above all, we're trying to make sure that in the period of time immediately after the session, in the next few hours, the person is not weighed down by what they've worked on. So we're going to use a number of different techniques for getting the person's attention out. And the classic one is to be asking, what do you look forward to? What are you looking forward to? And we use that question over and over and over again. But there are multiple other ways that we can go. And it's helpful to develop some skill in doing the present time part of the session and some comfort because it's an enjoyable part of the session and it is important. So we're going to go towards sensory experience. That's a great place to put some attention. So tell me 6 red things you see in the room you're in, or tell me 4 things that you can see that are made out of glass, or tell me something that you see looking around from where you are that looks pretty to you, or tell me about an object that has some significance that's around you somewhere, or look out the window and describe the outdoor scene, what you see out the window. So things that get the person paying attention to their vision, their hearing, their sense of smell. We can even use things that are about taste. So tell me what your favorite food is, or tell me the last meal that you really enjoyed. So any of the 5 senses are great to tune into as a way to get our attention out. We use just kind of fun and trivial questions, anything that requires you to use your mind, to focus on the question. So questions like, tell me 6 last names that start with the letter P, or tell me 5 first names that start with the letter D, or tell me as many countries as you can think of in South America, or tell me as many countries as you can think of in Africa. Things that we have in our world that have lots of varieties, like tell me as many different kinds of cheese as you can name, or name as many different kinds of horses, or name as many different kinds of dogs as you can. Tell me every different kind of flower that you can think of. We play games sometimes. You can just play kind of trivia games. One of the classic ones is, this isn't a trivia game, but one of the classic games we play for present time is giving a person 3 completely unrelated objects that you think of. And so I might say to the person, okay, I'm going to give you a giraffe and a raw egg and a 500-page manuscript. And then you're asking the client, tell me what you would do if I gave you those 3 things. And the idea is for the client to come up with some creative way to get those 3 things to interact. And like I would feed the egg to the giraffe, and then I would put the manuscript on the giraffe's head so that nothing would get spilled on it. Whatever, you're just coming up with some crazy, fun way to use the 3 things. And then another one that I've learned actually quite recently is to give them 3 random objects, but rather than asking them to find some way to use them, ask them to tell you a quick 2-minute or 1-minute or whatever story about them. So you might give them those three same objects and say, so tell me a story. Oh, well, so one day a giraffe came along and stepped on a raw egg and got it all over this big manuscript, and then maybe they tell a little bit about what that led to, or things that are entertaining. And so take the time that's necessary. Usually it's going to be 4 or 5 minutes, but if you've done present time questions with people, and let's say that day the person's just still, you can sort of tell they're still kind of a little down in whatever they were working on, it's always great to ask them, do you feel out, or could you use another question or 2? And then the client can say, yeah, actually, would you still ask me a couple more things? Or the client might say, oh, no, I'm good. And I really recommend making a box of present time questions. I use just like an empty tissue box, and think a bunch of questions like the ones I talked about today, questions that are in the manual, other questions that you think of yourself, questions you get asked one day in a co-counseling session. Try to just save those things, write them down, throw them in your present time box. That's a fun thing to have, and it also, then it's there when you're having one of those days where your mind just goes blank and you can't think of a present time question. Pull it out of the box. So that's the present time or attention out part of the session. So the main thing that I'm going to talk about is about making the best use of your own sessions, making co-counseling really work for you as a client. Most of what we talk about in training beginning co-counselors is about how to be an effective counselor. That's most of what the manual is about. But it's equally important, really, to be learning more and more about how to make your sessions work for you and how to get the healing that you want and the progress that you want in life. So I'm going to go over some essential principles in being a successful client and having things really work in the direction that you would like them to work in. So the first thing is, it's really helpful to be intentional about how you're going to use your time in a session, your own turn. And that means try to find some time on a day when you're going to be co-counseling with somebody to get a few minutes. It doesn't have to be a long time, maybe 5 minutes even, but some time, 5 or 10 minutes, to think ahead. Like, how am I going to use my time today? What's the issue I'd most like to focus on? And to start kind of getting some focus and some energy internally aimed in that direction. It may be something that you're struggling with about getting it to move forward in your life, and you want to go after what the underlying feelings are regarding that to see if you can get it unblocked so you can take a kind of action that you're having trouble taking. It might be about something that's just been bothering you lately, something that's been hurting you emotionally, or that's got you in a lot of sadness or frustration, and you might want to go after those feelings. There might be a particular thing from the past, a particular event or a particular series of events or a period in life that was difficult that you can tell you still need a lot more healing time on, and that you're going to spend some time working on that issue in today's session. So it could be a bunch of different things. It could be like, this is a day when I really just need to have fun in the session and tell entertaining stories. It can be a lot of different things, but the point is to be intentional, to make the decision. This is what's going to be most helpful to me today. This is what I need to attend to. So this is what I'm going to be going after during my turn. So that's step one, is to find a few minutes before the session, earlier the same day, to make some decisions about how you're going to spend your turn, so that you go in there with some intention about how you're going to be as a client, what you're going to be doing when you're the client. Second, to get in the habit, work through blocks to being able to ask for what you need. One of the things we say in co-counseling is you have to train your counselor to counsel you, right? Because we're all different. Obviously, in co-counseling, I'm teaching all kinds of basic principles, and I'm teaching ideas that I think will apply to lots and lots of different people, but nothing applies to everybody. And we all have our particular needs, and we all have our things that help us get to where we want to get to emotionally. So it means we have to learn about each other. So it's going to be really important for you to try to push through the awkwardness that may come up about being able to say to your counselor, here's what I would like. And it can be, I need you to sit closer, or I need you to sit farther away if you're doing an in-person session. It could be, I need you to say more, or I need you to say less. It could be, there's some things I really need reassurance about, like I really need to hear you say that my feelings are understandable, that I'm not like crazy for feeling what I'm feeling, or I'm in a phase right now where I'm feeling a lot of doubts about my own intelligence and competence, so I really need to hear from you that I'm an intelligent, competent person. Sometimes it's going to be needing to ask them not to do certain things. I need you to not interrupt quite as much, or I need you to not say quite as much, because that's distracting me when I'm talking. I feel like some of your questions are kind of pointing me in a problem-solving direction, and so I'd ask you not to be doing the problem-solving thing with me. I get distracted when you do such and such a thing, or seems like you're glancing at your phone sometimes. As I've said before, your phone should be nowhere near you when you're co-counseling. They should be a long arm lengths away and turned off, so you're not only hearing any notifications, you're not even hearing a vibration, because that's going to really suck. Both counselor and client's attention is going to go quickly towards the phone if you can hear any noises that the phone is making. As you've heard me say before, I really encourage you to buy a $5 or whatever digital kitchen timer, and not even use the timer on your phone, because even using a timer on your phone connects you to the phone mentally, connects you to the stresses on there, the things I got to remember to call so-and-so, I got to remember to text so-and-so. Do everything you can to keep your phones out of the picture. But anyhow, back to the client. So I get distracted when you do such and such, or I feel like you're a little distracted today. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to speak up for what you need, and it can be particularly uncomfortable when you need to ask the counselor to do something different, to tell them that something is in the way that they're doing. But it's important, and it's important for the counselor to be able to hear that feedback. This isn't some kind of harsh criticism. And in fact, when you're in a client role, work on not saying it in a impatient or like you should have known better kind of way. Your counselor doesn't know you. They can't know specifically what you would want. And even if they are sort of breaking one of the guidelines, like doing problem solving, which they're not really supposed to be doing, people make mistakes. They forget sometimes. So try to not snap at your counselor and just say like, oh, you're kind of slipping into problem solving. Would you please not do that? Or whatever it is that you need to raise. Do your best to raise it kindly, but do raise it. Do push through that discomfort. Once in a while, you may need, in a co-counseling session with a different co-counselor, to work through some feelings that are holding you back from raising what you need to raise with co-counselor number one. Like, oh, it bothers me when he does such and such a thing, or she does such and such a thing, but I keep chickening out of asking them not to do that. And you work on that in a mini session or in a session with another co-counselor and get through those feelings and get yourself together to be able to raise what you need to raise. So that's point 2 about making your sessions work for you, is learn to ask for what you need, speak up for what you need, including to speak up for things that you need to be different. things that really need to change. Third, to spend some substantial portion of your time as a client pursuing deep feelings and seeing if you can release them, pursuing discharge. And it doesn't have to be every session or all the time through every session. There are times when the best thing for you to do that day is going to be to do a bunch of talking. Like, that's just what you need. You have a bunch of stuff you need to talk out. You have a bunch of things you need to tell. That's fine. But it's easy as a client to get in the habit of talking your way through every session. And that's not going to get you the kind of progress that you could get in your healing and in transforming your life that you could get if you would spend substantial portions of time really going after your feelings. And so that's partly a matter of discipline. That's partly a matter of catching yourself. Ooh, I'm talking my way through my session again. And it's maybe a matter of asking your counselor, please notice when I'm sort of on another one of my talking rolls and slow me down. Please ask me what I'm feeling. Please ask me, do I want to breathe and be quiet for a minute? Please ask me, do I want to sit with a certain emotion for a minute? And then it's also about becoming aware of what helps feelings really move through you. So if you know, for example, that there's something that makes you laugh, bring it to the session. If you watched some part of a movie or some part of a television show lately that really made you laugh, tell about it. Tell that funny part of the movie or the funny part of the show, or maybe even watch it together and just really laugh. And of course, the counselor is free to laugh along with you. That'll actually help everybody keep laughing. If you have some funny story from your past that really makes you laugh when you tell it. One great way to go after laughter is telling embarrassing stories. And it's awkward. You may think, well, I don't want to tell stories about things that happened that I was embarrassed by or mistakes that I made or whatever. But if you just push through and go ahead and tell it, precisely because it's uncomfortable, it'll really make you laugh. And it's a great way. That's another great way to get a bunch of laughing in a session. And laughing is just as valuable as crying. It's not that it doesn't do the same thing. When people say, oh, laughter and crying are the same release, that's not true. They're healing different things. So you need them both. But don't underestimate how powerful laughter is in transforming our lives, particularly when it's connected to deep feelings that we have. And embarrassment is a pretty deep feeling. There's something makes you cry. Like a lot of us have like our certain crying songs, like our certain pieces of music, or you might have a certain poem or section from a novel that really sets you off. Then actually you can bring it. You can play the song during your turn, or you can read something aloud, or you can tell a story aloud that you know is likely to get you crying. The same thing with kind of all the central forms of discharge. There are things that you know make you furious and get talking about them and be pounding and yelling and actually discharging that anger, not just talking it out. Again, we're talking about really going after the release. And it's, again, like some of the other things I've talked about, it's a little more awkward. It's a little more uncomfortable. You have to push yourself a little harder. You're going to be a little more self-conscious in front of your counselor. But this is co-counseling. Like, your co-counselor wants you to go into emotions. That's what we're here to do. And so when those voices in your head start to say, oh, geez, I'm starting to cry. I don't want to cry in front of this person. Then you want to talk back to that voice and say, no, this isn't just anybody. Like, this is a co-counselor. They're going to be totally fine with me crying in front of them. That's part of what they expect to have happen. And just telling yourself that can help you be able to just go ahead and go into the feelings that you want to go into and go into releasing them. We all, I think, or almost everybody has a tendency when kind of strong feelings come up to sort of pull away from them a little bit. So get in the habit of leaning into them rather than away from them. If there's a strong feeling there, I'm going to try to feel into it. I'm going to let it come into me rather than trying to jump onto the next thing or trying to keep it at bay. If I already have a feeling, I'm going to be thinking about, well, how could I feel this even more deeply? How could I go with it? How can I let it come? Again, the counselor, very helpful at that point by saying, yeah, let that feeling come. Let it come. It's good. Feel it. Go ahead. Or if the tears are coming, yeah, go ahead and cry. If the person starts to pound and rage, yeah, go. Blast it out. Blast out that anger. And then so that was point 3, was about substantial part of the time pushing yourself to really go after deep feelings and go after discharging those feelings. That's where we're going to see the biggest transformations happen in our mood, in our quality of life, in our progress on action that we want to progress on in life. In other words, in all those arenas, we're going to notice the biggest difference when we make sure we're taking some real time to pursue discharge. And then the fourth thing I want to say about making your own sessions work better for you is how you live between sessions has a big impact on the quality of time you will get when you're a client in your session. And that largely means pushing outside of your comfort zone. It means every week finding some place where you challenge yourself a little bit, where you take a bit of an emotional risk, where you take some step in life that you don't feel quite ready to take yet. And I'm always saying, don't wait till you feel ready. You want to take a step when you know it's time to take that step. Don't wait till it's comfortable. By the time a step really is comfortable to take, it's too late. We should have taken it back when it was still uncomfortable to take it for multiple reasons. To push towards greater closeness in your relationships during the week. To push for speaking out for your needs on other fronts, not just with your co-counselor. To take better care of yourself. All those kinds of steps will matter to the quality of session that you have. And there's kind of a co-counseling joke where we say it's important to live well because it means that you get such good sessions. And it's kind of a joke, but it's also kind of true. You know, that sort of reversal of how you would think of it, because you would think of, oh, you want to have good sessions, good, it'll help you have a good life. The thing is, there's quite a bit of truth to the reversal, that living really well between sessions, challenging yourself, having the best possible life you can have, actually really makes a difference in the quality of your sessions and the likelihood that you'll be able to actually get to some deep discharge of feelings that you have from wounds you've experienced. And you know, when I talk about that concept of balance of attention and counters to distress that allow feelings to really move through you and not just sit there, that allow the discharge to happen, a counter to distress is sometimes you can't even tell exactly what the connection is to the distress. And when I first talk about the concept, I tend to talk very much about the connection, like that the countering experience is somehow the opposite of what the wound was. And there's considerable truth to that. But a lot of times it's more general than that. Like if you come into a session just having if your last couple of days have just been terrific days, like you were just in a good mood and cool things happen, you're likely to get a really good session that day. Like just a couple of great days in life are in themselves counters to distress. And that might be a day when you have one of those great cries or one of those great raging fits or one of those great laughing fits, maybe without your counselor even having to do that much, because your life was bringing you a balance of attention. Your life was countering that distress. So these 4 principles can really help your sessions work for you. And of course, we want to keep putting a lot of energy into helping the session work for the other person and to being more and more effective counselors. But practicing these 4 principles will really help things keep working for you.